All right. So with that, we welcome everyone to today, our panelists and our guests. We're going to go through a little bit of just kind of what to expect, and then we'll have our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll just jump right into it. As I said, this is very informal. There's no real presentation. Yes, I'll run a PowerPoint in the background that has some information on it. This is kind of some general information about candidacy, about and just to let that run in the background. That's kind of just based on some frequently asked questions, so that may take care of some of the kind of the base level questions, but still something pops up there that prompts a question. Don't be afraid to ask it. It's just kind of there to have some information in the background as we talk. And yeah, it's just a chance for you to, as our guests, to have access to some designees that have earned the designation and have been through the process and have gotten through to the other side, to have your questions answered and to kind of see what that process is like. Feel free to, when we get into it, to bring yourself up, unmute yourself, and just ask your question live if you'd like. I'll also be monitoring the chat function. So if you'd feel more comfortable just typing your name into the chat, please do that. And I'll read your question out loud to the panelists and see if we can address your question here live. Let's see. Oh, and awkward silence. Yes, we will have some awkward silence. So sometimes in these things, we like to fill the space with talking and doesn't allow people the chance to jump in with their questions. So we will have some dead air. That is by design, to let you collect your thoughts and get your questions together and have a chance for you to pop in with your question. And also, if you have no questions and you operate kind of more like I do, you like to join things and see what other people ask and learn from that, that is totally fine as well. So sit back and enjoy. Learn. Hopefully, you can learn from some other people's questions. And in the end, I might spark a question of your own that you want to ask today, or maybe contact us later and ask that question to program staff such as myself. So, all right. With that, we'll get into introductions. I see we have most all of our panelists have joined us. I think some are either joining late or might be running late. So I'll just open it up. And I think I saw Brad is on. He's on the committee. So I'll let Mr. Fowler start. Do you want to kick us off with introductions?
Sure. Good morning, afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Brad Fowler. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Professional Development Committee. I hold the RES and AAS designation, and here to hopefully help you out and answer some questions and anything that I don't know. Certainly the other panelists on here will be able to help us out with, as well as Jaron. So glad to be here. Look forward to any questions you all may have. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tina. I saw Tina's name on there. So Tina.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Tina Stone. I am the co-chair of the Professional Development Committee. I hold the PPS and the AAS. And so thank you for joining, and hopefully we'll be able to answer any questions you have and provide guidance. Thanks.
Good deal. Thank you, Tina. I think it's all Keith. You want to go next?
Certainly. I'm Keith Alexander. I manage the Agricultural Appraisal Department for the Palm Beach County Property Appraiser's Office. I hold the MAS and the RES designations, and I am happy to help as much as I can. If you have any questions, and even people have follow-up questions afterwards, they're certainly willing to, they can reach out if they want.
Great. Thank you, Keith. And Mike.
My name is Mike Mills. I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm the chief deputy here. And I do hold 4 designations. I think I'm done at this point, but CAE, RES, MAS, and AAS. Most recent was the AAS, which I got this year. Happy to help in any way, anybody that's pursuing designation.
Great. Thank you, Mike. And Jennifer.
Hello, Jennifer Reard. I work for the Maricopa County Assessor's Office in Phoenix, where I oversee the modeling team as well as what we call our special district team. So working with 2,500 taxing districts on all the information they need to do their part of the process. I hold an MAS, a CAE, and an RES designation.
I didn't put your CAE on the title. I am so sorry.
No worries.
Strike one for Jaron. All right, good way to start off here. And Amy.
Hi, I'm Amy Wallace. I work here at Onslow County. I'm in North Carolina. I currently hold the AAS and the RES.
Excellent, thank you. So as you see, we have a mix of folks from the committee to those that have had the designation for quite a while to some folks that have just earned the designation. And I felt fairly fortunate this time as we have several that hold both the MAS and the AAS. So looking at the title for this month, it just kind of seems like it might be two designations that aren't really all that related, but they are, and our designations show you that they have seen the interest and benefit of holding both. So we're glad to talk about both of those today. And with that, we will open up to your questions. So again, you can type your question into the chat, or if you just want to unmute yourself and ask our panelists. I'll probably address some of the more mundane operational kind of type questions, and our panelists will help talk about more about their process, their journey, their experience, those kind of things. So with that, we'll take your questions.
I have a
go.
question.
No one else wants to, maybe, or Teresa, you go ahead.
Sorry. The other day I was on a meeting call and it said 101 is going to be rewritten. Is that going to have any effect on the case study and the test for the AAS? Even that, like, obviously I've already taken 101, but is it going to change any of that before I get to that?
That's on me, isn't it? So as planned, it will not. So the key concepts that are measured in the designation exam shouldn't change with any restructuring or rewriting of course 101. We had a recent rewrite of 402 that did change a couple of things, a couple of minor things, and we do give candidates a chance to review that material ahead of time for the exams if they do change. But at this time, given the level of 101, we don't anticipate any changes to the case or master exams. Good question.
I would just add to that, Jaron. I'm part of the group that's in that rewrite program, and so I will tell you that that's part of what we've made a priority, is to make sure that we're looking into what's currently in the case study as well as the master exams, and make sure that we're not omitting anything or adding anything that we're not testing there. So yeah, everything should still be covered. And also that course is so critical to all of the states, a lot of the states, certification process. And so we don't want to do anything that would upend that. So it will be considered.
Thank you, Brad. All right, we got a question in the chat about the experience record form. We often get a question about that. The question is, when reviewing the experience guideline, I noticed that it mentions some duplicate options such as collecting and maintaining property data under the many categories. When filling out the experience record form, how do we break down the percentages in experience related to those broader categories? Whoops, I scrolled, but it could fall in multiple destination categories. Or is the intent to fill out an experience record form for each destination candidacy? Yes, that second one. So really what you're trying to do is show that you meet the experience qualification for the designation you're applying for. So if you're applying for I'll just use the RES for an example because it's the easy one, because it specifies 3 years in appraising residential property. You want to turn in an experience record form that shows you have at least 3 years in appraising residential property. The guidance document is there to show you kind of more what different broad tasks and roles and responsibilities can fall within those broader categories. So it's kind of like sub-level things that could fit into the experience in that area. So, when you're appraising residential property, you might be, even if you're a residential appraiser, you're not spending 100% of your actual work time appraising residential property. You're doing some other things as well. So that just kind of shows you that within the body of knowledge, you can have other areas you're working on, but those can still contribute to residential property appraisal. So you could still put 100% of your time in residential property appraisal, for example. Hope that answered it. If close enough, let me know. And if also you want to send me your draft and I'll take a look at it, we can talk offline as well too. So, but yeah, but the main thing is to look at just kind of think about the kind of work you do and just kind of a broad breakdown of your day. How much time do you spend on actual appraising or attaching values to property? How much time do you spend in the process or administration possibly of the assessment process? How much time you spend personal property, if at all, mapping? So those are all kind of the categories you'll see there. There are 5 categories. We have 6 designations. So those categories they're kind of forcing you to shoehorn in your work experience in those areas that can be applied towards meeting that experience qualification for the designation you're applying for. All right.
I'm going to jump in here just a little bit. The question that was just about the demonstration reports.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, if you're looking at doing multiple designations, so I did an MAS, then I did an RES, then I did a CAE, and that was on purpose to do it in that order. Because if you're going to do a CAE, the thing you need to keep in mind is that when you do the CAE, only one of those can be a case study. So either you're going to do a commercial case study or you're going to do a residential case study. And if you do, let's say you do a residential case study for your RES, now you have to do a commercial demo report. And I think I've seen one of those in my entire 13 plus years in this industry. So it is, the way I went about it is I said, okay, I'm going to do my MAS, which needs to be a model, mass appraisal, right? So I did residential on that. That rolled into qualifying for the RES because you need to do a residential for the RES. So that was my residential demo report. And then by the time I got to the CAE, I didn't need to do a demo report because I had already done one for residential. Therefore, I was able to do the commercial case study, which in my opinion is a little bit easier than trying to do a commercial demo report. I tried to do a commercial demo report and it didn't get anywhere. So I just ended up saying I'll do the case study. It was a little bit quicker. So yeah, just keep that in mind. If you're doing multiple designations, the demo report will qualify across different things and your case study will qualify across different designations. The only one that doesn't have a case study is the MAS. So that's something important to keep in mind there.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I have a question related to, I have a SRA designation through the Appraisal Institute, and I'm interested in pursuing the RES. And that was one of the main things that was really attractive is IAAO recognizes a lot of the coursework that I've done to get my other designation. How do those courses get credit? Is that like sent in and, before I pursue the designation, or what does that look like? Specifically, I was looking at online, because I have an SRA, course 101, 102, 201, and USPAP are all recognized. And so it kind of makes my getting that designation a lot quicker than some of the other ones.
It certainly does. So yeah, that's often seen as some parity there between our RES and the AI's SRA. So that's why those equivalencies exist there. And yes, you can basically to get the course equivalencies, we just need something that shows that you currently hold the SRA with the Appraisal Institute.
Okay.
So you can attach that with your candidacy application, or after you're accepted as a candidate, you can just email that in, and we can apply those credits towards your candidacy. If you wrote a residential demonstration report on your SRA, that would qualify under waiver. And there's a waiver form to fill out and a $100 waiver fee to earn the waiver to count towards the project requirement for the RES.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I see that Audrey asked about the AAS case study preparation workshop. I think it was 8:52. I think we're offering it this fall. If you go to our Learn site at iwao.learn.org, you can search 8:52 to show upcoming offerings. And if you don't see anything right now, as things come up open for registration, different classes are added almost weekly, bi-weekly, somewhere in there. So a lot of folks don't know this, but for most of our educational offerings, IAAO directly doesn't offer those ourselves. We rely on our local education coordinators who have either belonged to state level or associations, chapters, those kind of things. They know what their area needs and is asking for education wise. So a great majority of our courses are scheduled by those coordinators. And when they get those scheduled, then we post them on our website at the Learn site to register for. So that what you see today might not be what you is not going to see what you see next week on the calendar. So things are always added throughout the year. Even at this point in the year in August, we'll still be adding stuff throughout 2025 and early 2026. So if you don't see it now, keep checking. It'll be coming. Let's see. And Brad asks, is workshop 852 a requirement? It is not. It's an optional prep workshop to help you get ready for the case study exam. I might have panelists jump in here and talk about what a case study exam is, but it is not like any other exam you've taken, especially for an IAAO course. It is very much taking what you have learned and applying it to real world situations. And the format's even different. You'll get a question booklet and a data booklet. The question, of course, has the exam questions in it. And then the data booklet has the information you need to pull the data out that you need to answer those questions. And like any real life scenario, there's going to be good data and some bad data in there. So you need to be careful about what you are looking for, know what you're looking for, be able to pick that out to answer those questions. So it's not like passing an exam for like course 101 or 102. It is much different, and that's why they are 8-hour exams. Our candidates will take anywhere from 5 to 8 hours to finish those exams. And so therefore, yeah, so back to the question, is not required. And just depending on how you learn and what support you need, so it can be encouraged. But the main thing there, and part of it's a review of the material, but really at the end, there's a practice exam, and that's to kind of get you used to that environment, having those 2 different exam booklets, the type of questions asked, and to kind of get used to that format of being able to answer questions in that context.
Yeah,
And that said,
I would recommend the workshops. I haven't done an AAS, but I know for the commercial case study, it really helped me understand what the structure was. You don't necessarily have to take it in a class. You could actually request the materials and kind of self look through it. That's how I did it. But it definitely gets you in the mindset. I know somebody who worked on a CMS, and they do a lot of GIS work in their day-to-day, and shifting to understand the material that was on that versus what they do in their day-to-day practice, because when you're doing things on a computer these days, it's not quite the same as doing it by hand, right? So it just really helps you get in the right mindset for taking those case studies. Otherwise, I've heard people not take the workshops and get a little surprised on test day when they take that, because they weren't necessarily prepared for what the structure was and how to kind of strategize how they wanted to move through that experience.
Perfect, thank you. Does anybody else want to weigh in on case study exams?
This is Keith Alexander. I took the MAS, which didn't have a case study, but the RAS did. And I can say that there was no case study prep when I took it, but I buried myself in that thing for months. And that would be my advice. I was an appraiser for probably 22 or 23 years when I got my RAS. And there's zero chance I would have passed that test without really, getting a deeper understanding of all that stuff. And that prep class would have made a big difference, the case study class, for sure.
All right, thank you, Keith. And I see Linda has her hand up. You wanted to ask your question live, Linda?
Yes, please. Good morning, everyone. I have a little bit of a funny situation. I worked in our county assessor's office for 3 years, and I have not worked in the assessor's office for going on 2 years now. However, I have still been active. I'm on the executive board of our regional chapter of IAAO, so I'm still active and I'm still taking coursework. There's been called into question whether I still qualify to go for candidacy for my AAS designation. Can you weigh in on that a little bit?
Yes, so I would just share that to earn a designation, there are no like current employment requirements. To qualify for the designation, you just need to show that you have the right level of education completed. For AAS, it's high school, or you should turn in higher if you have higher than that. If you can't, 'cause a lot of people can't find their high school degree. And then also the experience qualification, and that experience can be gained at any point during your career. So it need not be something you're currently serving in. We have a lot of folks that, sometimes we'll see it announced that a commercial appraiser just earned the RAS. Well, yes, they earned the RAS because they're currently assessing commercial properties for the most part, but early in their career, they appraise residential properties. So they earn the RAS from that. So there's no stipulation in policy that says you have to be currently doing the work, just that you have the experience in that work from the past. And then as far as earning the designation is just that, it's up to you whether you want to hold the designation and what that says about your career and what you're aspiring to do and where you're moving forward to, but nothing says that you can't hold that designation if you're in the field. Does that help?
That's very helpful. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Can you expand a little bit on the candidacy application? How far along in the process do you have to be? Like, I only need the 332 and the 333 classes for the coursework for the MAS. So I don't want to wait too long before applying for a candidacy. So just kind of overviewing that process. And then once you apply, are you matched with a mentor, or is that something I have to request?
So I'll cover the general timeline and I'll let our designees jump in with how they approached when they decide to apply. By requirements, you do not need to be a candidate while you take coursework, but you do before you can submit your demonstration report or sit for a case study exam. So kind of between that coursework and the project phase is when you're required to apply as a candidate. Doing so earlier, there are some advantages. If you're going to challenge an exam, those are cheaper. And as you mentioned, also for professional destination advisors, those are available to candidates as well. And those advisors are available to those that are a candidate pursuing a designation. Right now, I need to do some more recruiting again, but right now we don't officially have any professional destination advisors for the MAS. I don't want to speak for our panelists on the call today, but I know a number of them have volunteered their time if I've asked them individually if they would connect with somebody thinking about the MAS to help them through. So hopefully at some point we can make it more official to have them join as PDAs. But yeah, we don't match on our end because it's kind of arbitrary. So what we do is provide a list of available advisors and let candidates reach out to designees and match that way. But again, as in right now, we don't have anybody on the list officially as an MES PDA.
Thank you.
Welcome. And I see Calista asked if she wants to be recognized at next year's conference in Calgary. When do you have to earn your designation by? That's a fine question because next year is even later. Calgary is going to be in October. For most of my experience, we've had conference in August. So typically what the on-stage presence is at conference is those that have earned the designation since last conference, roughly mirroring the Virginia Cup competition, which ends at the end of June. But since we're not going to be actually walking across the stage until October, we can add some folks afterwards. So I would say to be safe, to have your master's exam completed by the end of August, early September. And that would allow your designation to be conferred at the September committee meeting and be on the list to be included on stage for the conference in Calgary. And it might be a little later than that, but that's the safe time at this point. So being a little more than a year out right now.
I'm gonna jump in here and answer a few of these MAS questions that have come up in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
The master exam, it's been a while since I took it. I think I was just counting. I think it's been 7 years since I took it, but it is similar to the other designation master exam. So if you're familiar with those, it is multiple choice. Keep in mind, you're not going to have a computer, so you're not writing out a model or anything like that for an MAS, but you will be asked questions about, they might show you an output from a model. You might answer some questions about that. So yes, it will get into that 331, 332, 333 material, but a lot of the things that it's going to be touching on in that are going to be things that you have probably seen in some of the other classes before that, the statistics, that kind of stuff. And then somebody asked about data sets for a demo. I come from a very large jurisdiction, so my concept of a model is a little bit different than smaller jurisdictions out there. I will tell you mine, in retrospect, I think it was a little bit large. I probably tried to cut it down in terms of parcel count, all of that. I did an entire market area that we have here in Maricopa County called Awatuki. It is a very suburban area, so very cookie cutter type houses, very homogeneous, which makes it easy to model because you're doing an additive model for your demo report. So you want something that's going to be, you're not necessarily showing the most elaborate model you've ever done for a demo report. You're explaining that you understand all the concepts. So pick something that you're somewhat familiar with. If you're having to work with another jurisdiction to get some data, definitely spend some time learning about that community so you can explain kind of why you did certain things in your model. I would say, from my perspective, like I said, we do very large models here in Maricopa, but 5 to 10,000 parcels, that would probably be a good range. You'd probably do a little lower than that if you have enough sales. But it's really going to be dependent on how much sales data is in that particular area. You don't want to have no sales or very little because it's going to be very difficult to do a model for that. So keep that in mind. Not necessarily the parcel count, but like how much sales data are you going to be able to get? And then I think we were talking earlier about timelines for like when you start your candidacy, right? So what I did and what I tell my team who's been interested in doing things, although none of them have actually started, Jaren, they're all asking me about MAS. Finish your classes first, get those all done. Just because sometimes a class, maybe you can't go to a specific class at a specific time and you got to push your timeline out a little bit. So complete your classes first. Then I would recommend doing the application and doing your project and doing your case study or whatever it is you're going to do for those final projects before your master exam. But that's generally been the way that my office likes to approach it here in Maricopa is get all your classes done and then do the application and do the final steps there.
Very nice. Thank you. Any follow-ups to that? Either side, panelists, or or yes? While you're thinking, I saw there's a question about if there any way to ask IWO about the class you need to suggest it to offer it. And as I said, we offer very few classes ourselves. It's all through local coordinators. So you can contact our education department, education@iwo.org. Ask who the education coordinator is in your area, and you can make the suggestion to them. They're actually going to be the ones to schedule those classes.
Yeah, and I see question from Pima County. Hello. There's a question about 331 before 332 and 330. If you take in like 300 and 311, those have a lot of the same content as 331. So if it's not available, I don't know if 332 necessarily requires you have 331. I think it requires you have 300. So yeah, you could certainly go to 332 and 333. If you can't seem to get 331 in person, you can always request the materials and kind of look through it yourself. And then you can request to challenge the exam. That is an option. That's what I did for 333 because it was not being offered anywhere at the time. So those are options if you're wanting to take some of those classes and you definitely have some modeling, education already. I would say it's not a huge leap to take, get the materials, look through it. You can even do some of the exercises and stuff in the coursework yourself. And then you can actually work to schedule a challenge exam for those to get the credit.
Yes, that is a good option, and thank you for mentioning that. And I just mentioned that if you're a candidate for designation, I think the regular fee for challenge exam is 150, but for candidates it's $100. So if that's helps you in your timing for when to apply for candidacy, you're gonna have to apply at some point anyway. So you might as well apply before you do those challenge exams and get the lesser amount for the challenge exam.
It's all about your strategy a little bit. So, yep.
It is. So, and Brad asked if they're all challengeable. Well, course-wise, yes. So all the 30-hour courses can be challenged. The workshops cannot be. So USPAP is not our course. It's from the Appraisal Foundation. They don't allow challenge exams for that. And Workshop 71 is an online module on ethics, and there's no real test for that. So you just have to go through the module and complete the module. But other than that, all the 30-hour courses can be. I do know, and I don't know what our MES candidates think of this, but I know Jennifer had to do 333 by challenge exam, but I know it's encouraged by the committee at the time was thinking that it's best because 332 and 333 are so much more hands-on than the other courses that it's best to have that live if you can, but it is possible and still allowable to challenge them.
Yeah, I will say when I did 333, we have a 8-person modeling team here in Maricopa. So several of us were doing it at the same time. So we kind of created our own little class and kind of worked through it. So if you have other people who maybe are, working on models as well, maybe work on it together. And we had weekly discussions on the things as we worked through it and that kind of thing.
Excellent. All right. So I think we covered everything in the chat so far. If not, please speak up or ping me in the chat again. So I think we covered everything. So yeah. Open for new questions.
Those are all the questions I had. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Hopefully we've been a little bit helpful. So good. And only 35 minutes in. All right. And I think I misquoted the website for so like maybe you found it, but our learning platform is learn.iwao.org. I think I had it backwards before I was talking about it. Apologize for that. So it sounds like many of you are well on your way, and if I've been there several times. So
I'm gonna jump off, but I just wanted to say thank you one more time for your time this morning.
well, thank you for joining us. We're glad you took the time, and yeah, we'll have the recording out fairly soon too if you want to go look back on anything.
Great. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. So we had a lot of MES discussion. Anyone going for the AAS with some questions? No, we talked about it a little bit, but All right, while you're thinking, our panelists that remain, I was curious, we talked about this a little bit and maybe we've said enough about it, but I just was thinking more about, because the kind of questions that have come up, kind of the differences between the case exam and the master exams. So I was wondering if you want to talk about how you found the experience between the two exams, what was different for you between the two exams, if you want to address that a little bit for our candidates or potential candidates.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. For mine, I did a commercial case study for CAE. I will say the master exams are very similar to the test you take at the end of each of these classes, right? It's kind of covering material from the different chapters and across all of the classes. So things that you see a lot in those tests are, chances are you're probably going to see at least a few of those on a master exam for those courses that are related to that designation. The case study is very different from the master exams. It'll give you like a problem, like here's a property and you got to kind of read up all this information about it, and then kind of walk through all these different questions about that property. And so some of those questions will have to, when you answer them, there are multiple choice, but you got to line up your answers to make sure that they make sense all the way through. So there were some when I did mine where I was like, hey, I answered it like choice B on this one, but then I get to a further question down and like, but that doesn't create a right answer over in this other question. So I had to kind of go back and rework how I did the math on that one to kind of see. So it is a little more involved. It is a little more challenging. And you got to make sure your details kind of line up all the way through as you answer the different questions. So that is why it takes longer. The master exam, how you answer question 5 has nothing to do with many other questions that you're answering on the master exams, or just different topics all the way through. But because the master exam is all tied back to, or the case study is all tied back to a specific property, you got to make sure your answers kind of line up all the way through. So it does make it a little more challenging, which is why I highly recommend you get at least the workshop materials for the case study and look through them yourself and get familiar with that. Otherwise it could, I would say if I didn't have that, it would have been quite a surprise on test day to just kind of go in there without really having an idea of what I was getting into.
Thank you, Jennifer. Other panelists?
This is Keith. I would echo that, what Jennifer's saying. And again, I took the RAS case study, so I didn't take the AAS or MAS case study, but because there isn't one for MAS. But I use a lot of like mnemonics and word association to get through tests. Well, the case study doesn't allow that. Because you can't have a superficial understanding of some of these things. You really have to understand all the moving parts. For example, and I don't think I'm revealing any secrets to say, like with the cost approach, for example, there's a dozen steps, and if you don't understand all of them, it's going to trip you up and it doesn't allow you to move on. You have to really get just a deeper understanding of the stuff, because every question kind of piles on with the next question, and a lot of them rely on the correct answer from an earlier question in order to understand it. That's why I would say take the case study course if you can, kind of bury yourself in whatever the courses were that it took to get to the designation, because it's just what you normally do on a test. Like in the master exams, you can kind of get away with that a little bit. You get a little working knowledge of it, but you can't do that on the case studies.
Great, thank you, Keith. Anyone else? I'm just scrolling the chat, make sure I didn't miss something.
Yeah, so the question about study time. I think I gave myself like 6 to 8 weeks on the case study, especially because I was doing a commercial one, and commercial is not really my area of day-to-day work. So I really, gave myself a lot of time to just really dig into that. Master exams, I would say if you kept extensive like notes, like I do flashcards for all the classes, and I had all of those from 101 all the way forward. So I just took a lot of those flashcards and kind of put them all in a pile and said, okay, this is my study for master exam prep. So I studied for the master exam the same way I would study for any IWO class leading up to that point. It's just kind of the same approach for that. But the case study, you definitely want to give yourself some time to look through it, figure out what you got to do, figure out how you're going to get it done in the 8 hours that you have, all of that kind of stuff.
So other panelists, you want to share your study strategies that you used? You obviously were successful. You have designations.
I also did the flashcards. I actually bought a little spiral notebook that is actually flashcards, and I downloaded Quizlet. So I was constantly pulling it up in the car, going wherever, clearly not driving, and I would use that because I actually had like 300, 101, and a couple other ones, and that was free.
Great resource. Thank you, Amy. All right, Brad asked about eligible proctors for examinations. So yes, for the AAS exams, it needs to be an AAS designee or a CAE. A CAE designee can proctor any of the examinations. Then beyond that, the proctor needs to hold the designation for the exam they're proctoring. If this does not yield any eligible proctors in your area, let me know. There's a backup plan. Other proctors or other IWO designees that don't hold the correct designation may be able to be approved a proctor for you. It really depends on if they want to earn that designation themselves one day. So we'll see really a lot of PPS and CMS designees proctoring for other people because they're pretty tied into their roles, and sometimes the AAS is an overlap for those that don't want to really get into those. But I see a lot of CMSs proctoring for an RES exam or something like that. So we can get those approved if no other eligible proctor exists. If you just don't have any IWO designees in your area, we can also work with a testing center. And this isn't the big ones that cost money. This is, we don't work with them. They have all kinds of hurdles to jump through. We found that most public libraries and local colleges have either free or very low cost proctoring services. So if you have a library or college near you, you could check with them and see if they offer somebody that can proctor an exam for you, and we can work with them. So that's kind of the third option. If just no other options available to you through those that hold an IWO designation. You got some possibilities there. Good job. Good deal. Well, I'm going to stop the slideshow so I can see everybody a little better. I think we've seen the slides quite a few times now, so. Here we get down to kind of our final 10 minutes. So we're be available up to the top of the hour here, but also we don't have to keep you in hysteria for 10 minutes if we're all are out of questions, but just wanted to make sure, let you know that we are still here and available, but also if we've come to a natural end, then we can also just conclude. Ooh, I see something in Jackie's. Thank you. Deciding whether and when to take the leap. So panelists, thinking back to your first designation, how did you make that decision? How did you know that you wanted to do this and that you were ready?
I mean, I think mine was a little unusual because nobody had achieved the MAS yet, so it was kind of like a race. There were people racing for it. But I would say you don't have to decide. You can take the classes, right? The classes, it doesn't matter. Like I took my first IWO class 13 years ago, right? So it doesn't have to. There's no once you take the classes, there's really not a time clock that starts related to your classes. So take the classes, get all the way through that, then kind of see where are you at. Do you want to do the projects or the case studies or the exams? Or do you want to wait? There's no real like, clock that's ticking because you've taken classes, but go take the classes, go learn the material and kind of see from there. And then my last one was spurred because my mentor, my supervisor was retiring and he told me you had to finish the designation before he retired. And I was like, well, I guess I got about 8 months to finish a CAE. So that was what got that one going.
Good deal. I see Keith had to run on us. So anyone else? Amy, is Brad still there? Anything to add?
I just literally had taken all the classes and I was like, why not go for it? It looked great on the resume. So as soon as I finished with the RES, I actually was taking the AAS right after. So I got the RES designation in May and then the AAS in June of this year.
Good deal. Thank you, Amy.
I had
Tina?
I had a lot of support from others. So I think she was talking about a race for designations. Well, kind of when I got my PPS, there was only like, I don't know, 15, 16. There was very few PPS in the United States, with IWO. So there was several of us that got together and studied for that and took our classes and went for it. So just a lot of support. And it was something I wanted to achieve for myself. And of course, with the AAS, I already had a lot of classes with the PPS. So I decided to take that on, but just a lot of support from our my colleagues and friends here in North Carolina.
Well said. Thank you. Yeah, so we didn't really touch on for this chat, but yeah, some states are more active and organized than others. But yeah, do poke around. A lot of times state chapters have resources and you have not officially. You might be able to find some folks that have the same ideas in mind or are kind of thinking about it as well. Maybe you can form some kind of study group or partnership to tackle it together. Maybe folks that are in the hierarchy of the chapter or just belong to the chapter also hold a designation and be happy to talk with you about as well. And really, I think it's we do still offer our advisors and they're a very valuable part of the program to folks. But I do notice that quite a few people do have local support. And when they inquire about that, I usually encourage them to lean on that. People they already know, people that have the designation, can be just as valuable as having an official advisor available to them. So just encourage you to kind of look around your local area, see what exists. If you have any questions about that too, I do know of some, so you can always call or email me as well, and I can try to connect you with somebody in that way as well. So if you have folks I know are active in the area. All right, everyone. I'm going to slowly wrap up, I guess. So we gotten fairly quiet. So we had a great discussion today. I think I got through quite a few questions. If you have anything more, of course, this doesn't have to end the chat. I know several, if not all of our panelists are open to being contacted afterwards for follow-up. So you can, if you don't know them and don't know how to reach them, you can always contact me through peranto@iwao.org or designations@iwao.org. And if I can't answer it, I'll engage our panelists and connect you with one of them to help answer the question as well. So yeah, this is kind of just more of again, an opportunity to talk with folks, get the juices flowing, start thinking about it. And if you're like me, we'll clear off today, might go have lunch and then go, oh, I didn't ask this. We're always here. So don't be afraid to ask, and we'll be happy to find that answer for you. So thank you all for your time today and joining us. And if hopefully you're on the path, or maybe not close on the path to earning your designation. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.